Dr. Jill Stein. She was the former Green Party presidential candidate. Let's go ahead and bring her in. What's going on, Jill?
Hey, good to see you, Sabby.
Good to see you too. So nice to have you back. There's a lot of things that have been going on, and I do want to get your perspective about what some are saying is a new hope in New York City. So as you are aware, and everyone else, Zohran Mamdani went on to win the New York City mayor race. He ran against crazy, corrupt Andrew Cuomo and, of course, Curtis Sliwa. And he didn't just win by a little bit. This is a good win percentage for Zohran Mamdani, running against someone like Andrew Cuomo that has that name recognition and is definitely very much establishment. 50.4% to 41.6%. So he won by quite a bit there. And I want to get your take on this, Jill, because this was a mayor race, not a presidential election. There weren't third-party candidates running in this particular race. And one of the things I did notice, there were a lot of people, in particular, there were Green Party members in New York City that were very, very excited about Zohran Mamdani. And in a situation like this, where there's no third-party candidate, and you have a candidate that is running, that is offering a free bus, which is doable, a rent freeze on the rent stabilized apartments, which is also doable, and it's been done in New York City before. Offering community-owned grocery stores, these types of things that a lot of us would agree with. What do you say to those who are hopeful about someone like Zohran Mamdani?
I say, it's going to take a big fight to maintain this win. And, Mamdani's issues are the same issues that Greens have been fighting for, with few exceptions, but, totally on board with the crushing economic inequality. I think Greens would go farther and say that we need huge investments in social housing, as well as mega taxes on the rich so that we can afford to do that. We need to cut the military budget so that we're putting our tax dollars here at home where we need them instead of destroying housing and burning children alive and so on in Gaza and beyond. So, his agenda is very much in tune with the Green agenda. All the Greens I know, were voting for him. I'm not sure if they were working for him, but they were certainly voting for him. Now, why weren't there third parties on the ballot? Third parties weren't on the ballot because Governor Cuomo and the Democratic Party basically took all third parties off the ballot in the last election. Governor Cuomo had a poison pill in the last budget that basically raised the signature requirement so high that independent candidates, that is, people-powered candidates, really couldn't get on the ballot. Mamdani's win stands on its own, and it's great. He did have the benefit of ranked choice voting, which is something that the Greens have been pushing for, that the Democrats limited to just the primary. They won't allow it in the general because they know it's a good thing, but they don't want people to have free choice in the general election. Ranked choice voting, for those who aren't familiar, basically gets rid of the spoiler mythology, because I can't say it's actually an effect. It's a mythology. The small parties are really the window dressing. The big, the elephant in the room in our elections is the people who don't vote. It's about 1 out of every 3 who don't vote because the major parties have thrown them under the bus. And so many people are tired of being thrown under the bus. They've just checked out. That's the issue in our elections. It's not having people and parties that stand up for what it is that working people are dying for the lack of, for healthcare as a human right, and housing as a human right, and free public higher education, as well as, free transportation and the rest. Ranked choice voting was really pushed by Greens, has been for decades, actually, and the Democratic Party finally agreed to allow it, but just in the primary, not altogether. Also, Zohran had the benefit of public funding, and that also is something that Democrats have been struggling to kill across the board. We had it here in our home state, your home state too, in the form of clean elections that was passed by voter referendum. And then the Democratic Party repealed it on a voice vote. And that's happened all around the country. And, we used to have public funding for national, federal elections, for presidency, basically. And that's been basically removed from that public funding account. And there's almost nothing left. So Mamdani had the advantage of voting reforms that have been really pushed by Greens that Democrats have been fighting tooth and nail. The point I'm making here is that this is a great win. It's a win to be celebrated. It's a win for the people of New York, but it's a fragile win. It will require a lot of fighting to maintain it. And we can expect dirty tricks across the board. What was it? I think it was 25 million that Deep Pockets threw into Cuomo's campaign in the effort to suppress Zoran. And you can be sure the dirt isn't going to stop there. Norman Finkelstein did a really interesting interview, I don't know, with some obscure channel I hadn't really heard of before, but he pointed out that we need to expect that the credit rating for New York City is going to bottom out, and that there will be economic dirty tricks through banks and so on that will be thrown at his administration like curveballs in an effort to basically sow chaos. There's one kind of warning sign here that is not reassuring, and that is that Zoran backed off of his statement that he was going to fire Jessica Tisch as police commissioner because she has basically protected killer cops, has, overseen the crackdown on student free speech and the right to protest, and not just students, it's really all over New York, that the NYPD is on the wrong side of history. They have been for a long time. And she has maintained that, terrible stance. And she's also from a mega billionaire family and a very powerful Zionist family. Is she going to arrest Netanyahu when he sets foot in New York? I don't think so, but Zoran has stated that Netanyahu comes to New York at his peril because New York will respect the International Criminal Court. Well, there's going to be a real monkey wrench in his plans. And further, if there is struggle, for example, if his administration proceeds with rent stabilization and landlords are raising the rent anyhow and they're evicting people, what side is the NYPD going to be on? Whose side are they on? The Tisch family, which are big real estate investors. Are they going to be on the Tisch side of the divide, or are they going to be on the people's side of the divide? And to keep her as police commissioner is a very risky thing that when push comes to shove, which it's likely to happen because we're already there. Push has already come to shove, on our civil liberties, on cooperation with ICE, on, the kidnapping of migrants or anybody whose skin happens to be of a darker color. Push is coming to shove in our rights to free speech and our right to protest, and heads are being cracked all over the place. So push has already come to shove, and it could come to shove a whole lot more, especially around, rent stabilization, for example. And what side is she going to be on? And if the power of the state is in the hands of the oligarchs, you're in trouble. So, Norm Finkelstein was really raising serious concerns about what the implications of that decision are. And, it's just a real red flag that we have some tough times ahead, as Zoran said in his for the most part, wonderful victory speech. He said that addressing Donald Trump, if you're coming for me, you got to come through all of us, or if you're coming for any of us, you got to come through all of us, and that's the way it ought to be. And that's great that he has stood up for that. But for reasons like that, he probably ought to rethink his police commissioner.
Yeah, I know some people are waiting to see, like, maybe, maybe he could change his mind about that. We don't know. But one of the things I want to point to is that this is someone that ran on BDS. This is someone that said they wouldn't go to Israel. He said, I will be staying in New York to help people in New York, which makes sense. And in reference to BDS, I do want to show you this because they're already freaking out. I don't know if you saw this, Jill, but there has been an agenda that has been put forward by DSA and Mandami's team. It looks like the agenda that he had when he was a state assemblyman about BDS, the plan for BDS in New York City. So I want you to hear what they said about this on MSNBC.
They think it's the right message, but then they go back and they say, well, he supports BDS. He won't condemn the language of globalize the intifada. He seemed to play both sides after October 7th in his initial statement. They're deeply worried that you have some animosity for Jewish people and for the state of Israel. How do you respond to that?
Look, I think critiques of the state of Israel are critiques of a government, as opposed to critiques of a people and of a faith. And my job is to represent every single New Yorker. And I will do so no matter their thoughts and opinions on Israel and Palestine, of which millions of New Yorkers have very strong views, and I'm one of them.
Would BDS be the policy of your administration as mayor?
I've said that I would support and have supported nonviolent movements to bring about compliance with international law. And where this mayor has violated and looked to violate that kind of law, I would bring us back into compliance.
So yes.
No, I'm talking about compliance. Okay. Right? And I've said that I support BDS because this is a movement that is looking for that kind of compliance. We haven't seen it.
They think it's the
So some people, a lot of us pointed to this as well, the fact that he did run on BDS and still was able to win, even though people were telling him, like, and some people like Bernie Sanders, they were asking him to cool it on that, cool it on the Israel rhetoric, kind of like, don't talk, but he still, is talking about that. But that agenda that has been put forward that apparently was a leaked document shows different plans and different steps that they have for BDS in New York City in regards to Israel and Israeli companies, et cetera, which I 100% support. And so I think, a lot of people, again, they're seeing this and they do see this as a new hope, that it goes to show that, yes, someone can run on BDS and win. Yes, this is a big, FU to the Zionists and to Benjamin Netanyahu. And they are furious right now. I don't know if you've seen on social media, but Bill Ackman is probably one of the loudest ones right now. They are furious. They just can't believe that this happened. And I think if this race would have been a little bit closer, maybe they wouldn't be as vocal. But the fact that he won by the percentage that he won by, it goes to show you that things are changing. And they said this was a historic turnout in New York City. So a lot of people came out to support him. And I really think this does have them shaken up a little bit.
It absolutely does. And, I think this is really great news. Public opinion changed. It changed before this election. What this election showed is that public opinion is unstoppable. And you can't turn it around in an election. And remember, that change in public opinion had everything to do with everyone who's been out there crying murder. Murder and genocide, which is what is going on. The student encampments, the demonstrations, the rallies that have made so painfully clear, the 20,000 children and more who've been murdered, the 69,000 human beings who've been murdered, an additional 20,000 children who are severely disabled for life, as Israel destroys the healthcare of Gaza and then revokes the visas of children who were allowed to come here to have their life-threatening issues addressed. Their visas were, it's hard to imagine greater cruelty and greater sadism than, for example, the settlers who are attacking not only villages, not only homes, but grandmothers alone who are harvesting olives. You probably saw that footage that was filmed by Jasper Nathaniel, I think his name is, an independent reporter who was living in the West Bank and covering the olive harvests, and who captured this because the settlers were coming after him. They were coming after him, but he was locked in his car. So they saw an easier target, a grandmother, maybe 10 feet ahead. Why not? This is, the allies of the most moral army, that Israel claims to have. This is like how moral they are, that they're attacking grandmothers harvesting olives. So, Israel gets the credit for the transformation in public opinion. And the people, humanity who's been shining a bright light on this also gets the credit for changing public opinion because the truth is being told and has been for quite some time. And shout out to the Palestinian youth movement and Students for Justice in Palestine who've been taking it on the chin for standing up and telling the truth. And, academics and professors like Norm Finkelstein, for example, who was fired maybe 10, 12 years ago for refusing to be silenced. So that's where the heavy lifting has happened. And, some of us have been saying exactly what Zoran Mandani said in his election. Our campaign said as much in the presidential election. But if you don't have ground troops who can go knocking on doors, enabling you to acquire momentum, then it's very hard to break through. He was able to break through. He had a brilliant organization, wonderful community groups and advocacy groups, a lot of people advocating against Islamophobia and against the genocide were instrumental in his victory. So we all need to hold power's feet to the fire. We all need to hold power accountable and ensure that, that they stay the course. And it's great to hear that their plans are, that the Mamdani administration has plans to basically do as they said. And hopefully they will undertake boycotts and divestment because we have to do that. The genocide is not going to end itself. And I want to be sure to also talk a little bit about the Uniting for Peace initiative in the UN, because Mamdani can play an important role in that too. As the mayor of the host city, he can help give that really critical proposal a nudge and remind the UN that it needs to vote in follow-up to their decision a year ago. The UN decided a year ago that it was going to hold Israel accountable for complying with the International Court of Justice ruling, which said occupation is over. The settlements need to be dismantled, that the acts of genocide are over, that the apartheid is over, and Israel needs to comply. The UN gave Israel 1 year and said if Israel had not complied, and of course they haven't, they've doubled down on their evil ways, that the UN would pass rulings to hold Israel accountable and to enforce their compliance. That's what needs to be moved in the UN now, not Trump's proposal for a so-called, basically it's an occupation force, they call it a stabilization force. What would it stabilize? It would stabilize the status quo. It's basically a force to stabilize and to hold down Palestinians and Gazans so that they can't assert their rights. They're being told that this is not about you. This is all about Israel's security. And that's basically what the stabilization force is intended to do. There are a couple versions of that, but they all amount to the same thing. And there are rumors that Trump is about to ram that through the Security Council, which would be just a disaster. And, because the genocide isn't over, the starvation is continuing, the assaults on civilians are continuing, nothing is moving across the border. There is no health care, there is no medicine, there's almost no food. Gaza needs at least 600 trucks a day, and what's crossing is, it might be 100, it might be 200, but there's already a famine. This is not going to solve that famine. It just continues to add to the famine. So it's an absolute disaster. And I want to just remind people that we have the power to pass this because it doesn't go to the Security Council. This is in the People's House, which is the General Assembly. And they already voted on this a year ago. And you know what the vote was? It wasn't a majority. It wasn't a supermajority. It was a 90% majority supporting the ruling that Israel had to basically get out. They had to end the occupation. So the votes are there. What we have to do is hold our representatives' feet to the fire. People can go to lifelineforpalestine.com to be a part of petitions and actions. And there's one action I have to mention for sure with bells and whistles, and that is a general strike on the 28th on Black Friday, which the Italian unions are leading the charge. The Italian unions are absolutely fearless. They have already shut down the economy of Italy twice with incredible courage. They're being fined to the teeth to like $75,000. There's also a strike fund to help them out, but they are unbelievably courageous, and they already shut down their ports to the shipment of weapons. Genocide doesn't stop itself. From our experience in the 20th century and on. In modern times, genocide doesn't stop itself. It has to be stopped. That requires both boycotts and blockades, but it also requires a protection force or some kind of boots on the ground. Israel has shown, what its intentions are over and over again. Israel's mode of negotiating a ceasefire is to assassinate the negotiators. And yep. Israel has done that over and over again, actually for decades. This is what Israel does. Israel is not a credible player, and under its current regime does not deserve to be a respected adult in the room here. Israel needs to be, its leadership needs to be in The Hague. It needs to be under trial, and it needs to be stopped. It needs a global boycott of its weapons, economic, and in fact, the American public, has done a complete flip-flop on this. The American public used to be all in the camp of Israel, but about 1 year into the genocide, the majority was now in the camp of the Palestinians. And in fact, there are twice as many Americans now who condemn Israel's genocide as there are Americans who approve of it. So remember, we are winning in the court of public opinion. Where we're not winning is in our corrupt and anti-democratic leadership, which is why independent politics is inseparable from this struggle. It's not just AIPAC that we have to stop. We also have to stop the big pharma and the health insurance industry and the war contractors. This is the way American politics works. We're not getting out of here alive unless we use this struggle as a springboard for the larger struggle, which it is. As Gaza goes, we all go. It's essentially international law and human rights that are being dismantled right before our very eyes. And we are not going to be the top dog here around the world anymore. In fact, we're already not. And China and the BRICS have actually bypassed us as the major economic heavyweight around the world. So we need international law if we don't want the next hegemon, coming here and saying, hey, I like your house. I think I'd like to take your house. You're out of here, which is basically what Israel is doing. So we're all in the target hairs, and we all need to stand up together for the big picture as well.
Yeah, and I would say for those of you that live in New York that are watching, if you can get that in front of Zohran Mamdani, that would be really great. That general strike, November 28th, this is a big deal. And then also United for Peace. So we need more people to sign on this. I can try my best, Jill. If you haven't reached out already, I can try my best to get in touch with Mayor Wu.
Fabulous. That would be great.
Some of the city councilors I definitely can get in touch with, but if they can get that in front of her, I think that would be really great as well to get
terrific
behind that.
And I'll just say, if people want to, connect with these campaigns, they're all up or will be up soon at Lifeline for Palestine. Chris Smalls is kind of leading the effort to mobilize labor here in this country. And, you know, he organized the Amazon Workers Union to start with. So he's been fighting for labor for a long time. And then he went on the Gaza Freedom Flotilla and, you know, got singled out by the Israeli occupation forces for torture and was beat up and, you know, put in solitary confinement and not fed. And then he was refused the mode of travel that all the other detainees got. They all got on board airplanes, not him. He got dumped, I think, at the Jordanian border. You know, just outrageous racism, which is what Zionism is. Zionism is a form of white supremacy and colonialism and racism. So at any rate, Chris brings these struggles together, as we have to. This is about our welfare here at home, the welfare of working people, and whether we're spending our tax dollars killing children in other countries or, you know, feeding children in this country. And there are, you know, some 16, 20 million children now who are not being fed because we have a Congress that didn't see fit to make that happen. So go to Lifeline for Palestine and join with many networks now that are kicking in, both for Uniting for Peace and for this strike. And the purpose of the strike, the Italian unions, again, are very, they have a very big vision here. They are fighting both to shut down the transportation of weapons. They are fighting for working people that they represent, you know, who are also denied the basics of life. And they are also fighting for this protection force to be sent to Gaza under Uniting for Peace. Uniting for Peace just means that it's a process that doesn't have to go through the Security Council. So the U.S. cannot veto it. So we need to recognize how much power we have right now. We're told that we're powerless and we should be hopeless and quite depressed and all that. And most people are walking around feeling like, can we do? Well, actually, there's a lot we can do. As Alice Walker said, biggest way people give up power is by not knowing we have it to start with. And this is one of the ways that we have power. And we can cut back. I mean, we can stop the genocide, and we can also cut the military budget and put our dollars where they need to be here at home.
That's right. I was going to mention Chris Smalls. This was going to ask you. I think he's a part of that as well. Yeah, Chris has been doing like phenomenal work, you guys. And it's one of those things I said before that like Chris Smalls, after he unionized the first Amazon warehouse, he really kind of could have just sailed into the sunset.
Yeah.
You know, because he had like, you know, a lot of offers that were thrown his way, but he didn't do that. Like he's still out there fighting the good fight. And I think that's important. That's why I always, you know, appreciate what he is doing. Speaking of what people are doing, I want to get your opinion about Governor Hochul here, the statement that she just made. So I shared this earlier today. I don't know. I think she thinks that her seat is safe. But she was commenting about the free buses and the rent freeze. And this is what Governor Hochul said. And I think this is Adriano Espaillat. Yes, I think that's Adriano Espaillat, another representative.
Well, like I said, I'm from Buffalo. We don't put up with a lot of crap. So I just want to set the stage that, you know, you look at the history of people who've run multi-million-dollar ad campaigns to try and get me to change my position. I don't change my position. So I just want to put it out there. I respect people's opinions. I respect the proper place to convey them. And so I've said to people, I hear you. And that was important. But also, there's a time and place. And so that's all on that. No, I've had conversations on this trip, but many conversations, I'd say over the summer and the fall, that were important, that led to an understanding of what's in the realm of possibility, shared ambitions, but what is doable is the question. And so, no, we're aligned on so many of these issues. You know, I've made it clear where I have strong disagreements with issues that really do not pertain to, you know, the governance of New York City. I've said you need to get a police commissioner that people trust, who has a record of accomplishment to keep the trajectory that we're on right now, which is crime is going down. Crime is going down significantly. We don't say mission accomplished, but that is a great trend. So him agreeing with that assessment, that recommendation to keep Jessica Tisch was an important statement on many fronts. So I'm looking forward to, having our teams keep a lot of conversations with our teams. We said we'd be talking, I'm meeting him very soon to talk about our response if there is a surge of ICE agents and National Guard that do come, perhaps after his inauguration, and how we can be proactive in preventing that from happening. And that's the state I'm in right now, prevent that from happening. So we've had a lot of conversations. So no, I think there's a mutual respect, and that's gonna, I think, only grow deeper.
So she's making excuses, as you can tell, Jill, excuses as to, oh, I don't know if we can work on that agenda just yet, right? So the reason why I wanted to play that is because Kathy Hochul right now does have already 2 people that are running against her. Larry Sharp is running against her. He was on the show recently. He's running as an independent. And then Elise Stefanik, of all people, another Zionist, she is running against Kathy Hochul. I don't think she's going to stand a chance against her, but the reality is other people may come forward. I wanted people to hear this because, as you can hear from her, these are her words. She is the one that can sign off on some of these things that Zoran wants to do, right? Like, this is what I was saying about public transportation. That's something the governor may have to sign off on. So if you guys don't get the free bus, those of you in New York City, you need to look at Kathy Hochul, because she's already telling people, well, oh no, we don't really have the chance to I don't know if we can make that happen, or we're not focused on that, etc. So it's important that you follow that chain.
Exactly. And it's also, just putting this in the bigger picture, this is why the Democratic Party is not going to save you. Even if they allow Zoran to remain in office, even if they manage, that he doesn't get deported or whatever, who knows what else they will be doing. But at the end of the day, who else got elected on that day? You had 2 former intelligence officers working in the military that won the other Democratic races, for the race for governor in New Jersey and the race for governor in Virginia. These are centrist, basically conservative Democrats. That's really where the energy of the party is. That's where the money in the party is. The money in the party is not shrinking. It's getting bigger. And, the squad that entered the scene with all sorts of hope and fanfare kind of wound up, like in the case of AOC, working for the genociders and giving them cover and voting for funding for the Iron Dome. So you have to be we have to be on our toes, and we should not raise the white flag of surrender. It will take a big fight. You could hear Hochul there tiptoeing her way and choosing her words very carefully. We don't agree on other things. What is she talking about? She's talking about genocide, basically. We may have different views of genocide, essentially, is what she's saying, because she doesn't want to piss off her donors, and aware that she's going to be running against Elise Stefanik. I don't know where Larry, whatever his name is, where he stands. Yeah, I don't know where he stands on this, but she's trying to hold her donors close. And that's the way the Democratic Party works. They're very mealy-mouthed because they want to create the illusion that they support where people are, like for healthcare, for Medicare for all, for rent control or rent stabilization or public housing, but they won't come out and say it. She didn't say anything substantive, except that maybe we'll try to prevent ICE agents from coming here. That's a nice, that's not a financial, well, it is financial, because there are definitely investments in the prisons that ICE is filling up. So there is an industry pushing this, but they're probably not her biggest donors. So she's, she can afford to mention some, social justice issues, but she's not going to touch anything that's economic. And, that's as good as it's going to get. It's not only her, but it's also the legislature that the residents of New York are fighting. I think Hochul can like veto legislation. She'll have to sign it, but I think the legislation and the budgeting has to go through the legislature too. So it's a very uphill battle, and people need to be fighting it for the long haul, and, you know, need to have a big vision of what this is about and recognize that this is a very important victory. But don't think that the Democratic Party is your friend here. We continue to need independent politics more than ever, in my view, because we're not moving forward. We're moving backwards with the occasional victory, which can be important and energizing, but the system is not in our favor. It's more, you know, money and power are more concentrated in fewer hands than ever. Billionaires are richer than ever, and they have more power to control the party than ever. So don't make the mistake of thinking, you know, we can put down our arms now and surrender, and that progressive Democrats are going to take care of us. They're not.
Don't go back to brunch. I keep telling people don't go back to brunch because people get comfortable. Like I can see it already happening now where people are like, woohoo, okay, now I could just, you know, go back to what I was doing before. Like, no, like people have to understand. And I read about this, like they knocked on over in order for him to get that win. Amani Oakley was on the show during the night of the election. Amani Oakley also ran for office in New Jersey. So she went through this. So she know what it's like. Amani Oakley was explaining to everybody that they knocked on 3 million doors. Look how many people Zoran had to talk to out on the street. He was the one doing the man on the street videos. And then I think Cuomo tried to do that at some point. And it was just awkward and weird. But look at what he had to do to pull out that win. I mean, he had to, it was like nonstop, like they were going hard. And there was something she brought up, and I want to get your opinion about this as well, Jill. She said Amani Oakley was explaining that the problems that third parties run into is the infrastructure and the lack of resources, right? That it takes a lot of money to run a campaign. And I've never ran for office, but she was just explaining like there's so much money that is needed just to simply run, even for something like mayor. And we had Jose Vega on the show recently. He's running against Richie Torres. He ran against him last time too, but he's running against him again. And this time around, Jose said he felt as though it is important that he gets on the debate stage. The last time he ran against him, he couldn't get on the debate stage because he's running as an independent. So he's taken a different approach this time around, and he's deciding, he said, you know what, I'm running as a Democrat in the primary against Richie Torres, and then as an independent in the general. Which apparently in New York, it's a little bit different because you can have different lines, like you can be on different lines, and it's not like that in all these other states. Then I look at someone like, you know, Shama Sawant, who's running as an independent in Seattle, Washington, against Adam Smith, another pro-Israel representative who's been there for years, very much a Zionist. But in Washington state, they have what's called a jungle primary. So even if you run as an independent, you're still in the primary. So everybody will get to see you. And I think some of the concerns that have been brought forward is that if you don't get on that debate stage, then most people just aren't going to see you and they aren't going to know who you are. So I'm curious to hear your position. What do you think about what Jose is trying to do? We're running as a Democrat in the primary so he can be a part of the debates, and then running as an independent in the general.
So you can't be sure that running as a Democrat is going to get you into the Democratic debates. You know, you may remember what happened to Kucinich when Kucinich was being redistricted because he was, you know, he was on the warpath about the war in Iraq, and he was calling that out, and, you know, and he was a member of Congress, and he was redistricted, and he wound up running, I don't remember where exactly, but he was edged out. No, actually, this is then after that. After he was redistricted, then he was running for president, and they kept him out of the debates, and they will change the rules in order to keep you out. So, you know, I don't want to say that there's like just one blanket thing because things are so different from state to state. That's part of how they keep you kind of uninformed, and because you just can't follow this stuff, and they're constantly changing the rules too. But at the end of the day, you know, in my experience, you can't hide from the fight. You have to stand up and have the fight. And, you know, I'm drawn to the way Shama is doing this, which is to, declare your independence and fight for it. There are all kinds of questions about strategy, because if you're running for lower office, you don't have to get in the debate stage. You can door knock, and you can even get elected to Congress door knocking in some races, and you don't have to be in the debates. And if you've started at a state level, like for a state rep or something, you can use just shoe leather and sweat and just kind of community events. And you don't need so much money, you don't need so much infrastructure, and then you build your way up. Ultimately, that's what we have to do. I got, tricked into running for higher office for good reason, which is that you want to also cast a wider net and get the agenda out there that can inspire lots of other people and help energize the fight. We were in the last race for president because otherwise there would not be a ballot-based campaign that everyone would have on their ballots that would be anti-genocide, pro-worker, climate emergency. We were able to throw that into the national dialogue, not as much as if we had gotten into debates, obviously, or had mainstream coverage, but there is a point to running, even if you're not going to win, or say, even if it's not likely you're going to win, you can really help promote an agenda. And we really made genocide an issue that could not be ducked in that election. And, it's Kamala Harris's responsibility that she chose not to, to support a weapons boycott or something on that order. She knew very well what the consequences of her policy were and still chose not to do it. And it speaks volumes, because neither Democrats nor Republicans will stand up against the genocide. So, I really respect what Jose Vega is doing. It's great that he's forcing or enabling people to have a choice. I don't know enough about the particulars in New York, but I'd say the particulars are changing all the time. And you just have to be willing to build, and you can't expect to get there in the course of one election, because in the course of one election, you only begin to build a team, you only begin to build networks, and, to basically build a party. I do think, the reason to build a party rather than just being independent is because unless you are building a structure that has some endurance to it, then, it's just a one person effort, and that doesn't get you anywhere. You have to be able to build many people for a common agenda over many elections and many years, and then ideally over a lot of geography too, so that you have a lot of, whatever that third party is, you want to have a lot of candidates that are running at the local level and building up.
But do you think, because I'm looking back on it, being an unknown, do you think that Zoran, if he would have ran as a Green, or if he would have ran as an independent from the get-go, do you think he would have won? Because I don't think he would have gotten as much attention.
So, he was running as someone who was already a state rep. Mm-hmm. And so, he had some legitimacy on that basis. And now, I think the terrain is really shifting. Put it this way, if you are a member of an independent party, they will really double down on you and silence you and censor you and keep you out of coverage. So yeah, you do get all the slings and arrows if you are actually part of an organization that is fighting Wall Street, more so than if you're an independent. But even that is kind of shifting terrain now, and people are very friendly to independents. So, personally, I feel like we don't have much time, is my point of view here, having been engaged in this struggle really since the Vietnam War, but especially since, becoming a healthcare provider and seeing how sick we are and how people's health is really going down the tubes fast, and people can't afford healthcare and pharmaceuticals and all that, and just seeing how intense and urgent these struggles are, how much bigger they are becoming by the year. Not only that our health is going down the tubes and the, epidemics of chronic disease and all that, but that we can't get healthy food anymore, and that, we're not even regulating chemical exposures anymore either, with, the devastation that's happening to our regulatory agencies. And the Democrats don't stand up and fight back. So they've delivered Donald Trump. And, I think it's like 63% of Americans who say they don't trust Republicans, but it's 68% who don't trust Democrats. Why is that? It's because of the record of Barack Obama, and Joe Biden and Bill Clinton, cutting welfare as we know it, cutting the social support networks, establishing the incarceration, mass incarceration state, the Wall Street bailouts, the mass foreclosures, NAFTA and the deporting of our jobs. So, people really know what the Democrats' record is. It's failure to stand up for a $15 minimum wage. So the Democrats, it's not like the Republicans are better, but Democrats have gotten better known for really throwing working people under the bus. So, they can't win because they won't stand up and defy their billionaire donors. So I don't see us moving forward or defeating the Republicans through the sold out billionaire funded Democrats. And the Democrats are too addicted to the money to actually stand up and do the right thing. So, and besides, the numbers of independents is growing all the time and it's bigger and bigger. So, I throw my hat into that court because while you may not win this race, if we're going to get out of here alive, we need to separate our politics from the stranglehold of billionaires and oligarchy. And while you may win a race here and there, look at the trend. The trend is not good. The trend is very bad, that money gets more concentrated and the policies of both parties become more fascistic, more oligarchic over the years. So I'm pretty convinced, having been an observer of this stuff since the 60s, really, and 70s, especially. So, I think we have a fight. We've got to go through that fight, but there are just some really amazing developments right now, especially around, this moral clarity that the genocide has brought to so many people, young people in particular, who are really standing up to say, we've got to stop this genocide. We can do it. They've won in the court of public opinion, and they're not selling out, so on we go.
All right, Jill Stein, thank you so much. And I don't know if you're around this weekend or not, Jill, but if you are, I'm having a screening for my documentary this Saturday. I can send you the info if you're around.
Yeah, and I will try to get there. I have another commitment for the California Green Party convention on that day, but if I can juggle times, I'll see if I can do it, because I'd love to be there. And congratulations on the screening of your documentary.
Thank you so much, Jill. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. And people can go to lifelineforpalestine.com to follow up on the strike on the 28th. Save the date. Don't buy anything on the 28th. Save your dollars. You can give your dollars to feed people in Palestine or in Sudan, for that matter. You can do better things with your dollars than participate in the military economy. And so much more that's happening to get Zoran on board to help lead Uniting for Peace. That's you can tap into that at lifelineforpalestine.com. Also, there's a big push going on now against the AFL-CIO to get them to stand up. This is with Chris Smalls, pushing on the AFL-CIO to do the right thing here and to support the boycotts. And big shout out to the Italian unions, USB. They're called Unione Sindacale di Base, and they are leading the charge here with a general strike that may be catching fire far beyond Italy, because we need it here as well.
All right, Jill, thank you so much.
Thank you, Sabby. Good to see you.
Bye. Hey guys, this was a Sabby clip. If you like what you saw, hit that like button and subscribe.